Hello, I'm here today with the Daler Rowney Aquafine watercolor paint. I'm going to be unpacking it and making a color chart to see how I deal with new paints, but also to give you a first impression of the paint. Yesterday I did the Pebeo Aquarelle Fine and it was an absolute bummer. I had read reviews that said that the paint was really bad, and I didn't believe it because I've got gouache paints from Pebeo, from the same brand, and I really love them. So I was sort of not expecting the watercolor paint to be that bad, but it actually was. The starter set does not contain the right colors to mix. When I did mix colors, they became muddy, and somehow the paints didn't feel as if they have been produced with real pigments. And they are said to be produced nowadays in China, so really cheaply. And I think Pebeo made a mistake in doing so. They were €11.95. Then I also bought the Daler Rowney Aquafine or Aquafine in France in the same store, and I bought it for €19.95. But it was in a set with a lovely purple linen covered watercolor art journal. It's got a very heavy paper, 140 pounds, 7 by 10 inches, and acid-free, 25 pages. The paper is not very bleached, it's not very white, but it will do very nicely, and it's very thick, so you'll be able to work on both sides of the page. I'm going to be using this one only in the review. I'm going to do a review and a demo of the paint next week. Today is just going to be the unpacking of the paint, the making of a color chart, some mixing, and sharing some first experience of the paint with you. The experience of the paint starts with the packing, and sometimes even with the box. In this case, what for me is a little, how can I say it? What stands out is that it's packed in a plastic box. I'll show you the Pebeo. The Pebeo was surprisingly packed in a nice white tin. And I have been told on my YouTube channel that the white paint will chip off, and actually I look closely and it does. So I think it might go rusty. But I was pleasantly surprised that such a cheap box of paints came in a tin box, because it's much more expensive to produce than a plastic box. But obviously Pebeo chose an expensive box to carry very cheap and yucky paints in, and that may not have been the right choice for Pebeo. I hope Daler Rowney got that right, because what they come up with, and what I don't like about this, is this box. It's very thin, it's almost like a mobile phone. It's even got a thumb ring that you could use. Let's see if you can, yeah, now you can see the thumb ring that you could use if you want to hold the palette in your hands. But then to open it, this one is like a vault. It won't open that easily. Oh, now I open it in one go. But I have been struggling with it. So I don't really like the box. But then again, it isn't about the box, is it? It's about what's inside. Well, inside there are 12 colors, and the colors that are in here are different from the Pebeo. Pebeo chose some really awkward colors that you would not expect to find in a starter kit. In a starter kit for watercolors, you would expect to find warm and cold tones of yellow, red, blue, green, and brown, and a black. That's what you would expect in any starter kit. And Pebeo did try to achieve that, but they chose some really awkward colors. So in the yellows, there was not a lot of difference. Even in the blues, there wasn't a lot of difference between warm and a colder blue. And for that reason, I don't think it is very well thought out at all. they probably just gave it to some Chinese manufacturer, and the Chinese manufacturer said, well, this is 2 blues and 2 greens, and you know, they gave him the middle finger and just delivered that. Well, in this case, Daler and Rowney, I have been doing a little research, have been looking at reviews online, and people are very enthusiastic about this paint. I'm not sure, of course, about the experience of those people who reviewed this, but I'm hoping that perhaps Daler and Rowney has come up with a better and a more balanced colour palette for a starter kit. Because what you want in a starter kit is a colour palette that mixes well. Sorry, a message. What you expect from a starter palette is colours that mix well, colours that are bright and that remain bright once you start mixing them. And the Pebeo, they might be useful. You know, you can always use paint, of course, even when they do go muddy. You know, there are some techniques that you want muddy colours for, so no problem there. I will probably use this paint sometimes, or, well, but still in a starter set you want bright colours, you want good mixable colours, and you want paint that feels as if there are pigments in it that have each their own behaviour. So I'm going to try that out. Another thing that just stands out from this paint is it's got a brush. But as you can see, it's a very short brush. It's not a brush that you can pull out. It's not a travel brush. It is actually a small brush. Well, I've got very small hands. When I had to buy a tennis racket 20 years ago or something, I needed to buy a child-sized tennis racket, shamefully. So my hands are very, very small. But still, this brush feels too small. So I don't know if this is going, because what I want from a brush is that the stem will just be a little longer than my hands, because then I can sort of, I hold my brush like a pen a lot of times. I don't like to paint like this. It just doesn't feel right to me. But then again, I have to try. Never tried it before, and who knows, I might get really enthusiastic about this, because they did come up with a very good sized brush, and feeling the hairs, it feels like a good brush. So they didn't just chuck some garbage into their box, and I really like that. So the other thing that stands out, and I pointed that out in my vlog before, is that they did come up with something I always do when I buy a starter set, is I paint my own colour palette and keep it inside the box so that I can always see what colours to use. But what they did, the idea was good. Daler and Rowney had a good idea of doing that, but what I don't like about it is that they, I don't know if you can see that, but it's a see-through paper, it's parchment paper. And the colours never ever look very bright on parchment paper. So you do get an idea that there is yellow on there or blue on there, but you don't get an idea of the exact colour. And that's, to me, a mischance. And if Daler and Rowney ever goes about, you know, doing this box again, they should just include a little piece of watercolor paper and just print it on there, or just on a white card, but not on parchment paper. Also, if you look at this, the parchment paper, there is of course moist in the paints, and it just goes buckly. So the paint is quite hard. When I try to push my nails into it, I can't. The pans are quite hard. They're not very gooey. So I really wonder what it's going to be like. So let's head over to my other camera, and I'm going to be showing you what it looks like on paper. Okay, so I prepared a page for you guys to try and keep the video just a little bit shorter than yesterday's video, which was half an hour, and I see that I've already talked for 9 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep this one a bit shorter for you. Okay, so what I did is I drew 12 rectangles here that I'm going to be testing my paint in, and the little parchment paper with the color codes and names on it, I just stuck it onto my page with some tape. If you hear some noise, this is my new parakeets. I've got some barred parakeets now, a couple, and they are really excited because I gave them a swing today, and well, they don't know what to do with it. First thing I notice is that I don't see a lot of difference on the parchment paper between the two yellows. So therefore I don't think the parchment paper was a very good choice of Daler Rowney to make this colour chart on. The first thing I'm going to do to help myself go a little faster is I'm going to spray some water onto the palette. And especially since I noticed that trying to push my nails into the paint didn't work, the paint is not very gooey, that could mean, I'm not saying it will, it could mean it takes a little more work to get the paint off the naps, of the pans. So let's try it out. I'm going to start, no, not true at all, paint comes off very, very nicely. I'm using the brush they included, and first thing I notice is that contrary to the Pebeo that I used yesterday, this is vibrant. It's got a lot of colour, and now I'm only adding water. It's got a lot of colour. It's much, much brighter than yesterday's Pebeo. Much brighter. What I do notice is that the lemon yellow is actually a lemon yellow, and it's lovely. Now I'm going to use a gamboge. Gamboge is one of my favourite colours, although this gamboge is not very, it's a little lighter than Artist Grade gamboge, I feel. But still, it really is a cold and a warm yellow. So that's, they got this one right. And on this watercolour paper, you can clearly see the difference between the two. Then the vermilion looks like really good vermilion. It's hue. And I can already say that even by just using 3 colours, I already feel that this paint is a lot better than the Pebeo. Here a little flow starts to, I accidentally touched the yellow with the red paint. But I'm actually glad it does, because that tells me something about these pigments. It tells me something about the dominance of the pigments. Often when you put 2 colors close together and they start to flow into each other, usually, or very often, one of the paints is more dominant than the other. And that's useful information. So, onto the alizarin crimson. It's the same colors they had for the Pebeo. This one doesn't come up as thick, as vibrant as the others. But you know, that's with pigments, they all behave in a different way. The alizarin crimson by Pebeo yesterday was like magenta, was pinkish. This one is more reddish, it's more like red wine. It's a nice color, and again they did very well in choosing the color tones. Then we move to the green, which is quite a surprise next to the red. This is sap green. It's a beautiful sap green too, I have to say. This is gorgeous. I think I'm going to love this paint. I only drew 12 rectangles, but if this paint should be better available over where I live, this is a gorgeous sap green, I have to say. It's like olive green, and olive green is a color that is standard in my palette. It's the first color that I pick from any brand always. But this is wonderful, beautiful, vibrant. And I can already see now that paints are starting to dry up, that they don't become that much paler at all. So this is indeed a much better quality paint than the Pebeo. Much better. This indeed is like buying Cotman or Van Gogh. This is, you know, you can absolutely buy this. You don't need to buy artist grade watercolor paints. You can, but you really don't have to, because what you have to understand about artist quality paints is that when you start using them, you do need to know something about the pigments, because it's a waste of your money and time if you don't know a lot about them and you buy the wrong color combinations, and if you have trouble mixing, or if you don't quite understand what pigments are light fast and what are not. So if you buy a really good student quality paint, and I can highly recommend the Winsor & Newton Cotman, the Talens, Van Gogh, and I already believe that I can highly recommend this Daler Rowney Aquafine as well. It's beautiful, it's vibrant. This paint is doing exactly what I want my watercolor paints to do. So moving on to the ochre, and again you can see there is flow here. You can see that this red dominates the yellow, the alizarin crimson dominates the sap green, and the sap green dominates the viridian. So that does give me some information that I can use in my art journals when I want to attain certain effects. So that's useful information. So I don't mind the flow that is happening here. Yellow ochre is great. It usually is. It's a color I don't feel manufacturers can fuck up. It's clay, basically. Beautiful. Now we're moving on to light red, which I don't really understand why they use the name light red for an earth tone. I would never do that. Maybe I would call it light red earth tone or something. Light red. And in German it's called lichte ochre gebrannt. So why not say red ochre, light red ochre? Light red would sort of make me think to get a vermilion-like color, or cinnabar. Right, burnt sienna. I always like the burnt colors. Use them a lot in my work. Oh, it doesn't look very burnt at all. It looks like Mars brown. The Mars brown, I don't know which brand it is, but I have a Mars brown that looks a lot like this. It's gorgeous, beautiful, warm chestnut brown. It's a very beautiful color. Gorgeous. I mean, have you ever thought of autumn and of hot cocoa and the storms outside in the forest and chestnuts falling all around you, then this is the color you'll choose. This is gorgeous. Now we're moving on to cobalt blue hue, of course. You will rarely find, if ever at all, cobalt, the real pigment, in a starter kit. You won't find it, sometimes not even in artist grades, because it's a very expensive pigment. I don't like cobalt, I don't like this color, but that's my personal preference. Got nothing to do with the quality of the paint. But cobalt does really, as you can see, flow beautifully into the color of the sky. If you should choose to paint a beautiful sky, then this could do beautifully. Now we're moving on to Prussian blue, which is just like indigo, one of my very favorites. And I'm so glad that this starter kit by Daler Rowney is choosing such a very distinct difference between these colors of blue. Because that's what you want in a starter kit. You want to have clear differences, which the Pebeo actually absolutely failed to do. But this is gorgeous. It's a beautiful Prussian blue. It's not very dark. Sometimes Prussian blues are almost black, but this is, it's gorgeous. This, I really want to use this. This is like, you know, jeans color. So it's like indigo, but it's gorgeous. I'm absolutely thrilled with this box of paints. I mean, it does come in an awfully cheap plastic box that is hard to open, but once you crack the code, this paint is going to make you happy.
This is paint that's gonna, if you're gonna give yourself or anyone around you paint to start painting with, then please don't buy cheap shit, because that's gonna turn people off from being creative, thinking that they can't do it. But you do actually need good paints and good paper to get started. You don't need top-notch paints, but you don't have to, because this is absolutely great already. And this was very cheap. So I'm very thrilled. This paint is doing exactly what paint should be doing. I'm also very thrilled about the brush. My first impression that it would not be very usable was wrong. It is usable. It's a lovely brush. You can work, I think, very finely with it. And also it's good. Daler Rowney made the right choices in creating this palette, because look, the yellows are not very far apart in their intensity. You could expect a warmer yellow. The gamboge hue they might have chosen Indian yellow. They might just to make the difference a little bit bigger. But then again, you will probably notice the difference a lot better in the mixing, of course. Then, you know, the reds are very well chosen, the vermilion and the alizarin crimson, as well as the greens, because you have a mossy olive kind of green and you have a cold green, so that's gorgeous. The browns are good too, although I have to say that I would definitely need to mix up the browns with the black to create the darker colors for shading and everything. The only color I don't like in this palette is the light red, and not just because I think they chose a bad name for that. They should have called it light red ochre, but I don't really like it, and I don't really see much sense in that color, although I don't really know what other color they should have put in then. But that's my personal preference, got nothing to do with the quality of the paint. They chose well to add the cobalt blue and the Prussian blue. The Prussian blue is gorgeous, and I even like, for the first time in my life, cobalt blue. I never like it, but this one is gorgeous. I'm going to use this one, I know already. The black is good, it's deep, it's dark, I can already see it will help greatly in shading and in darkening the color, so fabulous. So now let's move on to some mixing. And I'm going to mix randomly, so, you know, this is not chemistry. I didn't study to mix these, so there's no secret here. I'm going to mix the Viridian with the lemon yellow. Oops. And let's see what it does. And, you know, it stays bright. Remember that yesterday when I was doing the same thing with the Pebeo, I had a hard time getting a bright orange. So let's see if I can get a bright orange. And you think that's bright orange? I do. I actually think this is a lovely orange. So let's see what happens if I toss in some alizarin crimson. And now it goes towards brown. You would expect that because they don't really belong together like the vermilion and the lemon yellow did. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. Let's see what other color I might try. Gonna try that beautiful sap green. I'm gonna add some, let's try the lemon yellow. Let's see what happens. It comes a little brighter. I'm gonna try to use cobalt along with the lemon yellow. Let's see what happens. And now I get this grayish kind of green. A pine green, I like it. So there is ample room. Let's try and make a purple. I'm going to use alizarin crimson with a little Prussian blue. Let's see if I can make purple happen. I can. It's not a very bright purple, so let's try this with the cobalt blue hue. Just some quick mixing to see, oops, that was a little too much cobalt. Just to see how it behaves. And there comes along a brighter purple. I'm feeling quite satisfied with this paint. And now I need to darken a red. For some reason, the witch is wearing a red dress. Lots of shading. Oh, that's gorgeous. Yep. This is doing exactly. Now I want to have a tree, and I think this is too light a color for the tree, for the bark. So we're going to mix in some black, and we're going to see what happens. I love it. Beautiful. What I notice is that colors do not get muddy. They remain beautiful. This should go muddy, and it does. And now I'm going to, no, wrong color. Skin tone. Let's see if I can get skin tone. Well, what is skin tone anyway, is it? I mean, it's different for everyone. But I don't have white here, because I would always add white to give the paint more body. But I think, yeah, this would do for a skin tone. And let's try and make a little more mud. Useful mud, though. Let's see what this... Oh, look. Oh, that's beautiful. A beautiful army green. Warm, rich, gorgeous. So that's my Daler Rowney Aquafine. I only drew 12 rectangles because this paint is not very widely available in the Netherlands. But I'm absolutely sure that if this were widely available here, I would buy this because I love this. So this is where I'm going to stop filming for today. Next week I'll be doing an art journal demo page with this paint, and I'll give you a full review of the paint. And I suspect I don't have to explain much more about this paint, but I think you've already noticed I'm quite enthusiastic about this. So thank you for watching, and see you next week. Bye!